Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Steve Knowlton, Dr. No for short. I have here at my home Chuck Hubbard, who is running for the North Carolina congressional seat currently held by Virginia Fox. As you may know, Mr. Hubbard is a retired newspaperman from Wilkes County, where he worked for over 40 years at the Wilkes Journal Patriot. He and his wife live in Wilkesboro. Today he is going to talk with us about his views on a number of topics and what he may accomplish in Washington if we elect him. Thank you for coming here, Chuck.
Thank you, Steve, for having me. As you and I had discussed before, one of the things that's facing our nation right now is what was called Trump's Big Beautiful Bill, obscenely named Big Beautiful Bill. My opponent, Virginia Fox, is the second most powerful member in the House of Representatives. She is the chair of the Rules Committee.
Is she?
That essentially means that she is the gatekeeper. She chooses what goes on the House floor or what does not. She and her committee. The Big Beautiful Bill takes $1 trillion out of Medicaid. It takes it basically destroys SNAP, which is food stamps and hot lunches for kids in Title I schools, poor kids.
Yeah. How do those two things affect people here in North Carolina?
Oh, absolutely destroys them. It destroys the poorest of the poor. I mean, they have very little go on as it is. If you take away Medicaid, what do? Their kids don't get dental appointments, their kids don't get checkups at their pediatrician. They can't afford medications. You take away hot lunches for these children. Some of these kids, that's the only meal they get a day that's hot.
It's terrible.
It's breakfast and lunch. I mean, it's cruelty. In addition, the Big Beautiful Bill, which was passed and is law, takes $500 billion out of Medicaid, out of Medicare. Now imagine that, with elderly people, what happens then? Medicare doesn't do enough as it is. You take this $500 billion out of it, it's destroyed. Elderly people are going to have to figure it out. They're at the whims of whatever goes on.
And what did they do with the money that they saved from Medicaid and Medicare?
All of this is predicated for one thing only. The Big Beautiful Bill allows over 10-year period, $4 trillion tax break for billionaires, for the top 2% in our nation, for the richest earners. They get $4 trillion tax break, and they take away these social programs so that they are basically financing or balancing the bills with, damaging the most vulnerable people.
So it shouldn't be called the Big Beautiful Billionaire Bill.
Pretty much. I think that's fair enough. And Virginia Fox could have said no to any of it. She could have said no to any of it. No, we're not going to touch any of it. Plus, it gave $50 billion to ICE. And we have seen the obscenity of that on our streets.
Oh, I know, it's terrible. It happened here in Charlotte, and it's happening in other states in the country.
And we had another shooting last week in Houston. This can't go on.
And then one in Maine.
So our job, first off, I will say this. They set the majority of this bill to not take effect until January of 2027, after the midterm. They don't want people out in the community, they don't want you folks to know how painful this is going to be. So they're waiting until January after the midterms, hoping that they're going to be able to hold on to the House. That's not going to happen. Democrats are going to win the House over. We've got to do it in such a way that it makes a statement. Now, in January and over the next 10 years, these cuts will absolutely decimate our social safety net. And I'll tell you something else, it's going to decimate our economy. Because all of these folks who are not getting these services, what they do then, they're right out on the street. So they won't be able to afford the goods that they need to get by. That means grocery stores suffer. Doctors' offices won't have as many patients,
And that brings us to the other thing, the affordability, not just for the people who are Medicaid or Medicare, but for everybody, with gas prices going up, food prices going up. And what sort of things can you do with this?
One of the things that there are several ways we have to attack it. And none of them are perfect, and none of them are immediate. One thing we can do immediately is we can raise the minimum wage up to $17 an hour nationwide. Right now it sits at $7.25 an hour, 7.25. That's not a wage, that's an insult. We move it up to $17 an hour, that's a beginner right there.
Yeah, and that minimum wage has been that way for what, 20 or 30 years?
That is correct.
And meanwhile, inflation has just eaten into the power of that $7.50 an hour.
For 20 years at least, because Virginia Fox in Congress, when it was raised to $7.25 an hour, she voted against that and said that was too much.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, of course, that when you take inflation into account, wages haven't kept up with inflation since the 1980s. You know, so essentially people have been behind the 8 ball for 45 years. We call it supply side economics. You take off regulations and you allow the wealthy to accumulate wealth with the magical, the somewhat magical promise that it's going to trickle back down to the economy in terms of job creation and better wages. The better wages never come about, and it never trickles back through. It stays at the top because human nature is, if you make money, you want to hold on to it.
Exactly. And I know that trickle down idea came through Ronald Reagan, I believe it was.
Correct.
But it was never found to really work. It never really helped the nation as a whole.
Corporate efficiencies rule the day. You know, they're trying to make the most they can by paying out the least they can, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's the way corporations work. That's the way all of our businesses work. We're trying to bring the most in by holding down costs, right? You know, and you know, the people who get damaged are right down here on the street. And
Exactly.
you know, essentially, when you have Elon Musk, who now is a trillionaire, paying essentially 5% of his amount, his gross a year in taxes, as opposed to somebody who out here on the street who's paying out 30%, 40% in their earnings. It's not fair. We got to make the billionaires pay their fair share. We got to make the adjustments that we have to make. We've got to attack that. But affordability doesn't stop there, Steve.
Yeah.
You know, every time inflation goes up, it hurts people right here worst. You know, the people who make the least have to pay the highest percentage in that. You know,
Yeah, I think it's disgusting because the billionaire is not only a matter of wealth, but it's also a matter of power. So Elon was able to give to Trump, I think it was $260 million or
something like that.
It was a huge amount of money.
It was,
which,
may have been more.
Of course, helps a person get elected. And ads help people get elected. And the more money you have, the more ads you can have.
And that goes, of course, to another matter, which is Citizens United. I'd like to see that decision reversed. You know, put a lot of that type of money in there. But every time you have a spike in inflation, particularly in gas prices, which right now are spiking because of Donald Trump's war that he started, unilaterally started in Iran without consulting Congress. Now, I put that, addressing that entirely on Congress. People like Virginia Fox could have said, no, you don't get to declare war without us being involved, right? We're not going to fund it. But they did.
If the Republican Party in Congress, including Virginia Fox, had kept a rein on Trump all during this time, and he knew that he had to be accountable to them, I don't think he would have started this war.
Yeah, if only they had, didn't think they were going to get something out of it, or they weren't so afraid of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, I'm a former newspaper publisher. We tell the truth. That is the number one guiding thing for me as a newspaper publisher. I did that for 40 years. My grandfather founded that paper after the First World War. We are an example of the American dream. My grandfather had nothing. He had a good name, but that was it. And that newspaper sustained 3 generations of us until we sold in 2020. We know about small business. We know about how our employees became like family. We know that 49% of those employed in the United States are employed by small businesses. So it's my job, I believe, in Congress. And Virginia Fox doesn't care one thing about this, but it's my job to encourage entrepreneurialism and the growth of small businesses right here in a Reidsville you know, in Wilkesboro where I'm from, in Boone, and in Greensboro. You know, we need to make sure that small businesses start, thrive, and hire employees so they can be paid living wages.
Oh, I understand. And as you know, I was a family doctor for 40 years, ran my own practice, was a small business in a sense. So I understand the struggles and the problems of running a small business. And I not only understand it, but I appreciate the people who are doing this, because a lot of work gets done behind the scenes that most people never know about.
Yeah, you know, and my campaign is not taking corporate donations. We don't do that. You know, we're not taking donations from groups that support other countries.
Gotcha. Now, what's Virginia Fox doing?
She takes a ton of money. She's taken, the last I checked, and I'm sure it's a lot more now, but she's received over $400,000 from AIPAC.
Whoa, whoa.
Which supports Israel. That's a whole other matter right there. You know, we're not taking any money from AIPAC. She takes, if you look at her donation list, she takes a small fortune from Duke Power, for example. And by the way, Duke Power, anybody who sees this video needs to understand what Duke Power is up to in raising your rates, and I'm sure you do, looking at your bills, you know, but my opponent's taken a lot of money from there, and she's not going to restrain them in the slightest, you know, and I certainly will. It's important to me, though, again, to support small businesses. I'm not opposed to corporations, and I'm not opposed to people even becoming millionaires or billionaires. I mean, I'm good on them if they're that, you know, if they're that successful. But we don't do that on the backs of people who are suffering.
We want a level playing field.
That's correct. We want everybody to have a shot. I'm afraid that the American dream is in danger of dying. You know, the notion that if you stay in school, work hard, you know, and raise your children, that maybe your children will do better than you, and their children will do better than them.
Exactly. But with inflation and with other pressures, that has not been the case in the last 30 years or so.
So we need to have a complete reversal on what we're doing.
I got you.
In
So-
the United States.
So I think to the viewers, you know, that this is a guy who I think will be working for you. And most of the people watching this are not in that top 1%. And most of the people watching this will appreciate what Chuck has gone through. He's lived the same life that you have been living. He's done the same sort of work you're doing. And I think that because of this, he'll be able to do things for you in Washington that many other people couldn't, including Virginia Fox. So I hope this has been instructive. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me, Steve.
Thank you.